The night was quiet for Daniel's small cabin at the edge of Pinewood Forest. The only sounds were the gentle hum of his old radio and the soft tapping of rain on the wooden roof. It was the kind of night made for sleep, the kind where even the forest seemed to rest. Daniel leaned back in his chair, sipping warm tea, trying to relax after a long day. He loved listening to late-night radio shows, strange stories, mysterious voices, and music that made his mind drift. But tonight, something felt different. The air felt heavier, and the sound of the radio seemed off-out. As the clock struck midnight, the radio made a low crackling sound. Then, a voice broke through the static, soft, distant, almost whispering. "Can you hear us?" Daniel froze. The words came again, clearer this time. "Can you hear us, Daniel?" He turned up the volume, his heart thumping. The radio host hadn't said his name. No one knew he was listening. The broadcast was supposed to be a music program, no talk, no calls, nothing personal. "Who's there?" He whispered to the empty room. Static answered. Then a faint, rhythmic tone began to play like Morse code, but slower. Beep, pause. Beep, beep, pause. It repeated again and again. Daniel grabbed a notebook and started writing the pattern. He didn't know why, just an instinct. As he listened, he realized something impossible. The beeping matched the blinking light on his radio's signal display. It was flashing in perfect sync. Outside, the rain had stopped. A deep silence covered the forest. Daniel walked to the window. The clouds had cleared, and the sky glowed faintly silver. For a moment, he saw something unusual: 3 small lights in the sky, moving slowly in a perfect triangle. He rubbed his eyes. Maybe it was an airplane or a drone. But the lights didn't blink. They shimmered like stars, but stars that moved. The radio hissed again. "Do not be afraid." The voice was calm, almost kind. Daniel stepped back. "Who are you?" he asked. "We are near," the voice replied. The lights outside began to move faster, circling over the forest like silent watchers. Daniel felt his skin crawl. The temperature in the room dropped. His breath turned visible in the cold air. He reached for his phone, but it had no signal. The screen showed a strange message. No network, connection blocked. Then, every electronic thing in the cabin went dark. The radio, the lights, even the clock. Only the sound of the rain returning broke the silence. Daniel lit a candle. The faint glow showed his reflection in the window, his eyes wide, heart racing. But behind his reflection, for just a second, he thought he saw another shape, a shadow moving near the trees. He blinked. It was gone. The radio came back to life suddenly, louder than before. "Daniel, we're waiting." He stumbled backward, knocking over the chair. "Waiting? For what?" he shouted. "For your answer." Then, a deep, long hum filled the room, so low it made the floor shake. The sound seemed to come from the ground, not the radio. Daniel covered his ears. The candle flickered wildly, then went out. Darkness. Only the glowing triangle of lights outside remained, hovering above the forest. He ran to the window again, this time opening it. The cold wind hit his face. The lights moved closer, now low enough to see their shape clearly: a metallic craft, silent and smooth, without wings or sound. For a moment, Daniel felt a strange calmness wash over him. His fear faded, replaced by curiosity. He whispered, "I can hear you." The lights pulsed once bright, warm, and then shot upward into the clouds, vanishing instantly. The hum stopped. The radio turned off. Everything went silent again. Daniel stood there for a long moment, listening to his heartbeat. Then the radio crackled one last time. 7 nights. We return. He didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window until dawn, watching the forest, waiting for another sign. The birds began to sing, the sky turned gold, and everything looked normal again. But Daniel knew it wasn't. Something had reached out from the dark, and it knew his name. He didn't understand the message, but he knew one thing for sure: the real story was only beginning. The next morning, Daniel woke up with heavy eyes. He had spent the whole night staring at the sky, waiting for the lights to return. But they never did. The forest outside looked peaceful again. The sunlight broke through the mist, painting everything in soft gold. Birds sang like nothing strange had happened. The normal world had returned, but Daniel knew it was only pretending to be normal. He turned toward his radio. It was still on the table, silent, the dial frozen on the same frequency. 11.3 megahertz. He didn't remember tuning to that number. He gently turned the knob, but all he got was static. Then, from somewhere far off, came a faint echo of that same beeping sound from last night. Beep, pause. Beep, beep. Daniel froze again. The sound wasn't coming from the radio, it was coming from outside. He stepped out of the cabin, his boots crunching on the wet ground. The forest air was cold and sharp. He followed the sound deeper between the trees. The beeps grew louder, clearer, leading him toward the lake at the heart of Pinewood. The surface of the water was smooth like glass, but near the edge, he noticed something strange. 3 perfect circles burned into the grass. The marks were dark, like something had hovered there and scorched the ground. He knelt down, touching the edges. The soil was warm, still warm. Then the beeping stopped. Complete silence again. Daniel stood, scanning the sky. Clouds had started to gather, thick, gray, and heavy. But through them, he could see faint movements, like lights dancing behind the clouds. He squinted. There they were again, the same 3 lights from last night, dim but visible, sliding silently above the forest. This time, they weren't triangles. They were forming symbols, patterns that shifted like a language written in light. Daniel's hands shook. He whispered to himself, "It's not random. They're saying something." He ran back to his cabin, pulled out his old laptop, and connected a small antenna to try and capture the radio signal again. The moment he powered it on, the same low hum returned, vibrating through the walls. Then the radio came to life again. "Daniel, you saw the signs." It was the same calm, distant voice from last night. "Who are you?" Daniel asked softly. "We are the ones who watched you since the beginning. Your world is changing." Daniel frowned. "Changing how? What do you want from me?" "To listen." Static filled the room. The lights in his cabin flickered again, and the laptop screen showed something unexpected, lines of symbols forming rapidly, like an alien script. Then, the screen turned black. Daniel wrote down everything he could remember from the screen: shapes, lines, and strange curves. As he compared them to what he had seen in the clouds, he realized something. They were the same symbols. Outside, thunder rolled. The lights behind the clouds were growing brighter, flashing rhythmically. The forest glowed in pulses of blue and white. Daniel felt a vibration under his feet. The ground trembled for a moment, as if something massive was moving below. He ran to the window again. Through the storm clouds, he saw the lights break apart and scatter like stars, but one stayed behind. It hovered directly above his cabin, shining down a pale blue beam that reached the roof. The radio buzzed louder. "You are chosen to remember." The voice echoed, calm and distant. Then everything went white for a second. Daniel couldn't see or hear anything, only the sound of wind rushing in his ears. Then the light vanished. He found himself standing outside, even though he didn't remember walking out. The storm was gone. The sky was clear again, full of stars. But it wasn't the same sky. The constellations were wrong. Some stars had moved or new ones had appeared. Daniel stared in disbelief. "What is happening to me?" He looked at his wristwatch. The time showed 3:03 a.m. He had blacked out for almost 5 hours. He returned to his cabin, heart pounding. On the table, his radio was glowing faint blue. The frequency had changed on its own, 7.07 megahertz, and on a torn page from his notebook, words had been written in handwriting that wasn't his own. 7 nights. 7 messages. One choice. Daniel's breath caught. He picked up the paper, reading it again. The ink was still wet. Suddenly, the forest outside erupted with sound, a deep rumble, like thunder but constant, rising and falling in waves. The lights behind the clouds were back, swirling faster now, as if calling him. Daniel stood frozen, staring through the window. The beam of blue light appeared once more, cutting through the clouds like a spotlight. He whispered to himself, "If I follow it, maybe I'll understand." And then, as if the lights had heard his words, the beam moved slowly toward the forest path, waiting for him to follow. Daniel grabbed his flashlight, took one last look at the cabin, and stepped out into the dark woods. The wind carried the faint whisper of that same voice. Fading into the night, the truth waits beyond the clouds. The forest was still when Daniel returned at dawn. His flashlight's batteries had died hours ago, and the path back to his cabin was a blur in his tired mind. Every step echoed with the soft crunch of leaves, and behind every shadow, he felt like someone or something was watching him. When he finally reached his cabin, the first light of morning touched the roof. Everything looked the same at first, but as he stepped closer, he noticed the soil near the porch had been disturbed. It looked as if someone had walked there during the night. He knelt down to take a better look. The marks were not human. Each footprint had 3 long toes and a circular heel, deep enough to suggest something heavy had stood there. The shape didn't match any animal he knew. His hands trembled slightly as he brushed the dirt. The tracks led from the forest edge straight to his front door and then stopped. No returning prints. Whoever had come had not left the same way. Daniel's heart raced. He turned slowly, scanning the trees. The morning wind moved through the branches, whispering softly, almost like words he couldn't understand. Inside the cabin, everything was untouched. The radio sat silently on the table, the notebook still open where he had left it. But there was something new. Right beside his cup of cold tea lay a small, metallic object. It was no bigger than a coin, smooth, silver, and slightly warm to the touch. When he held it near the light, faint symbols glowed along its surface, the same shapes he had seen in the clouds and on his laptop. He whispered, "They were here." He placed the object down carefully and sat on the chair, trying to steady his thoughts. Who were they? And why him? The radio suddenly crackled again. "Daniel, you followed the light." He froze. The voice was softer now, almost human but not quite. "Yes," he said quietly. "What do you want from me?" "To understand what you will see next." Static filled the air for a moment. Then a new sound began, a deep, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat through the speakers. Daniel leaned closer. With each beat, the metallic object on the table began to glow faintly, pulsing in the same rhythm. The glow brightened until the object lifted slightly into the air, hovering above the table. Daniel stood back, eyes wide. The voice spoke again. "A gift and a key. Do not fear the shadows." The object dropped suddenly, hitting the table with a sharp clang. Then the radio went silent. Daniel stared at the thing. It no longer glowed, but faint wisps of light still lingered on its surface. He touched it again. This time, an image flashed in his mind. He saw trees, darkness, and a tall, slender figure with eyes that glowed white. The image vanished in a blink, leaving Daniel gasping for air. He stepped back, clutching the edge of the table. "What are you trying to show me?" he whispered. Outside, the birds had stopped singing. A strange silence covered the forest again, the same kind he had felt before each encounter. Then, a single knock echoed on the wooden wall. Daniel turned. The sound came again. One knock, then 2, then silence. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. The air was cold, and the sky had turned gray. The footprints near the porch were fresh again, as if someone had just been standing there. Daniel followed them, this time, deeper into the woods. The trail led him toward the lake once more. When he reached the water's edge, his breath caught. There, half hidden under the mist, stood a figure. It was tall, thin, and completely still. Its skin shimmered faintly, blending with the fog. The pale eyes glowed where its face should have been. Daniel couldn't move. He didn't feel fear now, just a strange calm, like he had expected this all along. The figure tilted its head slowly, as if studying him. Then, it raised one long hand and pointed toward the sky. Above them, clouds swirled into a spiral. Through the center, a beam of white light broke through, shining directly onto the lake's surface. The water rippled in perfect circles, glowing where the beam touched. The figure lowered its hand. Then, in the softest voice Daniel had ever heard, it spoke not through sound, but directly in his mind. 7 nights, 7 signs. The gate is near. Daniel took a step forward. What gate? What does it mean? The figure didn't answer. It simply turned and walked into the lake. Its body glowed brighter with each step until it disappeared beneath the surface. The water stilled. The light faded. Daniel stood there, staring at his reflection. His heart was pounding, but he felt something new, a pull, deep inside him. Whatever was happening, he was now a part of it. He looked down and realized the metallic object was glowing again in his pocket, faintly pulsing like a heartbeat. He whispered to himself, 7 nights, 7 signs, and as he turned back toward the cabin, thunder rolled once more above the clouds. The lights were returning stronger, closer, and brighter than before. Daniel took one last look at the lake, then ran back through the forest, knowing that this was only the beginning of something far greater than he could imagine. The next morning came with heavy clouds and a strange silence in the air. The forest didn't sound alive anymore. No birds sang, and even the wind moved slower, like the whole world was holding its breath. Daniel hadn't slept at all. He kept staring at the small metallic object resting on his table. Every few minutes, it glowed faintly, soft blue pulses, like it was breathing. He had tried to record its light with his phone, but the camera refused to focus. Each time he pointed it at the object, the screen froze, showing nothing but static. Finally, he sat down and whispered, "What are you trying to tell me?" As if answering, the object gave one bright flash. Daniel jumped back. The glow spread to the radio beside it, turning its signal dial to 9.09 megahertz all on its own. Then came the sound, low, steady, and watery, like a heartbeat echoing from beneath the lake. Daniel turned up the volume. The hum deepened. Somewhere beneath it, he could hear faint voices, distorted, layered, impossible to understand. He closed his eyes and listened closely. Then he heard his name. Daniel. He froze. The voice sounded distant, like it was underwater. "Come to the water. It waits." Daniel opened his eyes. The sound faded back into static. He stared at the object. Its glow had turned deep blue now, pointing pulling toward the lake. He took a deep breath, grabbed his coat, and stepped outside. The forest was misty, thick, and quiet. The trees seemed taller, darker. As he walked, he noticed something strange. The closer he got to the lake, the less he could hear. Even his footsteps felt muffled, like the air itself was heavy. When he reached the water's edge, the surface was calm again, but in the center of the lake, light shimmered faintly beneath the surface, moving in patterns like signals. Daniel took out the metallic object and held it toward the lake. The light on the object matched the ripples below perfectly, flashing in rhythm. He whispered, "Are you communicating?" Then the radio in his pocket came alive. The same soft voice spoke again. "The key belongs to you. Place it in the water." Daniel hesitated. His heart pounded. What if it sank? What if it was a trick? But something deep inside him said to trust it. Slowly, he knelt and lowered the glowing object into the lake. The moment it touched the surface, the water rippled outward in a perfect circle. Blue light spread through the lake, bright and silent. Then, the ground beneath his feet vibrated, and a soft hum filled the air. Daniel stepped back as shapes began to appear below the surface, massive geometric patterns glowing faintly under the water. Circles, triangles, and lines all connecting like a giant network. It wasn't just a lake anymore. It was the gateway. The voice spoke again, stronger now. Listen to the message beneath. Daniel looked down. The glowing object floated back to the surface and projected a thin beam of light upward. Words formed in the air, symbols shifting and translating themselves into English. The world above forgets. The world below remembers. Daniel's heart raced. He whispered, "The world below?" The water pulsed once more, and new words appeared. "Your species has been warned before. The stars are watching again." He felt a chill. Was this a warning, a test? The light dimmed, then focused again, this time forming an image of vision that flickered before his eyes. He saw cities on fire, dark clouds covering oceans, and ships rising from the sea like silent towers. Then the vision faded, leaving him gasping for air. The radio's voice returned. Softer now, "The choice will come on the 7th night. Remember what you see." Daniel dropped to his knees, breathing hard. "What choice? What do you mean?" No answer. Only the sound of gentle waves. He pulled the object from the water, but it no longer glowed. It was cold and silent now, as if its power had been drained. He looked at the lake one last time. The lights beneath it were fading away, sinking deeper into the darkness below. Then, something unexpected happened. The water rippled once more, and something small floated to the surface. It was a stone tablet, smooth, dark, and covered in the same alien symbols. Daniel picked it up carefully. As soon as his fingers touched it, a faint whisper filled his mind. "You are marked. The others will come." Daniel's hands shook. He looked around, but the forest was still. No movement, no sound. He wrapped the tablet in his jacket and ran back toward the cabin. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound felt too close. When he finally reached the cabin, the lights inside flickered on by themselves. The radio dial turned again, this time to 11.11 megahertz, and a final message came through. "The water speaks truth. The air hides lies. Prepare for the next sign." Then silence. Daniel placed the stone tablet beside the cold metallic object on his table. He looked at both and whispered, 7 nights, 7 signs." Outside, the clouds began to gather again. The lights behind them shimmered faintly, watching. And somewhere deep under the lake, something huge shifted awake, waiting for the next call. Daniel didn't remember when he finally fell asleep, but when he woke, sunlight was already breaking through the gray clouds. His cabin looked the same, but the air inside felt different, heavier, charged, as if invisible electricity moved through it. The stone tablet and the metallic object still sat on the table. They were dark now, but Daniel could feel faint vibrations coming from them, slow, steady pulses, like distant breathing. He rubbed his eyes and walked to the window. The forest looked calm again, though a thin fog hung between the trees. He almost convinced himself that it was over, that maybe it had all been a strange dream. Then the radio came alive on its own. A burst of static filled the room, followed by a deep, clear voice. "Daniel, the sky is calling." He turned to the radio, heart pounding. The voice wasn't the same as before. This one was sharper, stronger, almost human, but layered, like many voices speaking together. "What do you want from me?" he asked softly. "To see what others refused to see." The static returned. Then the radio began to flicker, and Daniel noticed something odd. The antenna outside was glowing faintly blue. He stepped out onto the porch. The sky above was changing. Thin streaks of light were cutting through the clouds, moving fast like meteors, but to controlled, to perfect. He shielded his eyes. The lights were not falling, they were forming. Within moments, they arranged themselves into a large circular shape high above the forest. It glowed faintly, humming with a deep, rhythmic sound that echoed through the trees. The radio in his pocket started to vibrate. When he pulled it out, the screen flashed with a new frequency, 13.13 megahertz. He pressed play. A new sound came through, a repeating tone, followed by words that barely made sense. "Human signal detected. Connection established. Witness acknowledged." Daniel frowned. "Human signal? From where?" Then another voice joined in. This time, it was real. Human. Is someone else hearing this? Daniel froze. "Who is this?" "My name is Clara. I'm a researcher from Washington Observatory. We've been tracking that frequency for months. It just went active again, and we're getting your location." Daniel's knees weakened. "You can hear it too?" "Yes," Clara said, her voice tense. "And if you're where I think you are, you're standing right under the center of the signal. Don't move." He looked up again. The circle of lights above was growing larger, spinning slowly. The hum deepened until it made the air vibrate. "What is this?" Daniel asked. Clara hesitated. "We believe it's not from space. It's in our atmosphere. A structure, possibly a satellite, but not built by us." Suddenly, the metallic object inside the cabin began to glow again, bright and strong. Daniel ran in and picked it up. It pulsed in rhythm with the lights above. "It's responding to you," Clara said through the radio. "Whatever that device is, it's connected to the source." Daniel held it up. "What do I do?" Before Clara could answer, the radio burst into loud static. The lights above flashed once so bright Daniel had to cover his eyes. Then everything went silent. When he looked up again, the circle of lights had stopped spinning. It was now perfectly still, directly above him, and a beam of light began to descend. Daniel stepped back. "Clara, it's coming down. Get away from it," she shouted. But he couldn't move. The beam hit the ground just meters away from his cabin. There was no heat, no noise, only pure white light. Inside it, something shimmered. A figure, tall, transparent, like made of glass, and light stood within the beam. The radio's voice returned, calm again. "Daniel, the Watchers see you?" Clara's voice broke through the static. "Daniel, you're being scanned. Whatever it is, it's analyzing you." The light around him flickered. For a moment, he saw flashes, memories, not his own. Planets covered in oceans of mist. Tall beings walking through silver halls. Stars burning and fading like candles. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the vision ended. The beam retracted, and the circle of lights began to fade back into the clouds. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping. The metallic object in his hand was now glowing gold instead of blue. A new line of symbols appeared on it. Slowly, they translated into English before his eyes. 5 signs remain. "Prepare the world," he whispered. "Prepare?" How? Clara's voice returned, shaky. "Daniel, are you still there? We lost connection for 2 minutes." The signal vanished. He took a deep breath. "I'm here, but it's not over. They're not done." Clara paused. "Daniel, listen to me. You're not alone in this. There are others across the world reporting strange frequencies tonight. Something is waking up." Daniel looked at the metallic object. It was pulsing softly, steady like a heartbeat. "Then it's starting," he said quietly. "The signs have begun." He looked up again. The clouds were closing, but deep inside them, he could still see faint light circling, waiting, watching, and from the radio came one last faint whisper. "The 5th night will reveal the truth." By the 5th night, Daniel's cabin no longer felt like home. It felt like a station and outpost between 2 worlds. The air buzzed with quiet energy, and every sound outside carried a weight that made his chest tighten. He hadn't left the forest in days. His phone no longer connected to anything, and the radio stayed locked on strange, shifting frequencies. Every hour, new tones came through, low, rhythmic pulses that seemed to count down to something. Clara's voice had gone silent too. After the 4th night's signal, her messages stopped. The last thing she had said was, "They're transmitting from orbit now. We can't block it anymore." Now Daniel sat at his table, the metallic object glowing softly beside the stone tablet. The symbols on both items had changed again. He couldn't read them, but he could feel them. Somehow, he knew the meaning behind them, like whispers in his mind that weren't made of words. He stood, pacing the cabin. 5 signs remain. But what are they? The radio answered with a sudden burst of sound. "Look to the horizon." Daniel turned toward the window. In the distance, beyond the forest, he saw a tan orange glow cutting through the night clouds. At first, he thought it was lightning, but the light moved to steadily, to deliberately. He stepped outside. The wind was strong, carrying a faint hum through the trees. Then, he saw them, 5 lights in the sky, line up perfectly above the forest ridge. They didn't move, they didn't blink. They just hovered there, each one pulsing once every few seconds. Daniel whispered. The 5th night. The metallic object in his hand began to heat up. It vibrated softly, then projected thin beams of light into the air. 5 golden lines, matching the 5 lights above. A low, layered voice spoke through the radio. "The time of observation ends. The time of choice begins." Daniel frowned. Choice? What choice? To remember, or to forget. The words made no sense. "Forget what?" he shouted. "The truth beneath your skies." Suddenly, the radio crackled again. A second voice came through, human this time. "Daniel, it's Clara. I'm back on signal. Are you seeing this?" "Yes," he said quickly. 5 lights. "They're above me. They're above every major point on Earth," she replied, panic in her voice. "They're transmitting at the same frequency, 13.13 megahertz. It's global." Daniel's breath caught. "Then it's not just me." "No," Clara said. "And Daniel, we decoded part of the message. It says something about integration. We think they're trying to merge with our network, our satellites, our systems, maybe even our minds. Before Daniel could answer, a thunderous sound rolled across the sky. The lights began to move slowly at first, then faster, spinning in a huge spiral that filled the heavens. The trees bent under a sudden gust of wind. The forest glowed faintly as if reacting to the light. Daniel dropped to one knee, covering his ears as the air vibrated violently. The radio fell to the ground, still speaking through the chaos. Daniel, they're broadcasting something, images, sound, data. It's everywhere. We can't stop it. The world around him blurred. For a few seconds, he wasn't in the forest anymore. He was somewhere else. He saw giant halls of crystal, endless skies filled with stars, and beings made of pure light standing in silence. Their voices filled his mind, not angry, not kind, just ancient. Your kind reached for the stars without listening. Now you must hear. Daniel gasped. The vision flickered. He saw Earth from above, millions of glowing lines connecting across the planet, like veins of light. Integration begins. Those who remember will rise. Those who resist will fade. Then it ended. Daniel collapsed to the ground, breathing hard. The forest was quiet again, except for the faint hum that never truly stopped. The 5 lights were still there, but smaller now, fading back into the clouds. He picked up the radio. Clara's voice came through, shaking. Daniel, something's changing. Power grids are failing everywhere. Satellite signals are mixing with that alien frequency. It's rewriting data, changing code, like it's alive. Daniel looked down at the metallic object. The golden glow was gone. In its place was a small blue flame, soft and calm. He whispered, maybe it's not an attack. Maybe it's a connection. Daniel, don't trust it, Clara warned. You don't know what they want. He stared at the flame. Maybe they just want us to listen. The radio went silent again. Outside, the wind stopped. The lights were gone, but the clouds above swirled slowly, like something massive was still hiding behind them. Daniel walked to the edge of the forest. The air smelled of ozone and rain. He could still hear faint tones in the distance, steady, rhythmic, counting down. He whispered to himself, 6 nights gone. 1 remains. Then, somewhere in the clouds, a voice whispered back, clear, soft, and close to his ear. The final night will decide if your world joins ours, or disappears beneath it. Daniel stood there in silence, his heart pounding. He looked toward the dark horizon where the first light of dawn was breaking, but deep inside, he knew the 7th night would not bring sunrise. The world didn't wake up on the 7th night. Cities were dark, radios silent, skies filled with slow, pulsing clouds that glowed like a living storm. Humanity stood at the edge of something it couldn't understand. In the cabin, Daniel hadn't slept. He sat beside the radio, its light flickering weakly in the darkness. The metallic object lay on the table, its blue flame now a soft golden pulse, beating like a heart. He whispered to himself, this is it, the last night. The radio crackled suddenly. Clara's voice came through, faint and broken. Daniel, are you still there? We've lost most communications. The signals are merging with something intelligent. It's rewriting everything, even our thoughts when we listen too long. Daniel stared at the window. The forest outside shimmered faintly, like a thin mist of light covered the trees. I'm still here, he said quietly. They're not attacking, Clara. They're trying to talk to us. Talk? Daniel, people are collapsing in the cities. They say they hear voices in their minds. Some see things that aren't there. He touched the glowing object. Maybe they're showing us something we need to see. Suddenly, the radio whined sharply, and a 3rd voice joined in, deep, calm, layered with strange echoes. The final transmission begins. Those who understand will remain. Those who fear will fade. Daniel froze. The voice wasn't from Earth. It was the same he had heard in the vision on the 5th night. The air in the cabin grew heavy. The walls trembled as light poured in through every crack, white, blinding, and soundless. Daniel stumbled back, shielding his eyes. When he opened them again, he wasn't in the cabin anymore. He was standing in a vast hall made of glass and light. Shapes moved around him, tall, fluid beings whose bodies shifted like smoke inside crystal. One of them spoke without moving its mouth. You have listened. You have not fled. You are ready to remember. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Remember what? that you were not alone in creation. Your kind was born from the same light as we were. But you forgot. When fear replaced wonder, images filled his mind, ancient Earth before humans. When stars shone closer and the air itself carried whispers of distant worlds. He saw beings walking with humans, teaching them to look upward, not downward. Then, something changed. The connection was broken. You built walls of metal and silence, the voice said. But some of you still listen. Some still dream. You are one of them. Daniel's voice shook. Why come back now? Because your world speaks louder than ever. Through your machines, your signals, your fear. You reached for us. Now we answer. A sudden vibration shook the hall. A wave of dark static rolled across the walls. The alien forms flickered. Daniel heard Clara's voice faintly cutting through the light. Daniel, the energy readings are off the scale. It's pulling us in. Satellites, data, everything. If it keeps going, we'll lose everything. Daniel turned to the glowing beings. Stop it. You're destroying us. We are not destroying. We are merging. You cannot evolve by hiding from the stars. He shouted, We're not ready. For a moment, silence. Then the being closest to him leaned forward, its light dimming slightly. Then choose. Memory or mercy. Daniel didn't understand. What do you mean? To remember the truth and change forever. Or to forget and sleep again, safe in your small sky. He felt the cabin returning around him. The light fading, the cold air rushing back. The radio was still glowing, the flame inside the object flickering wildly. Clara's voice screamed through the static. Daniel, the energy spike, it's focused on your location. You have to decide. Whatever happens there will affect the rest of us? He looked at the object. It pulsed like a living thing, waiting. He whispered, If I stop this, everything goes back. But if I accept, he looked toward the horizon. The 5 lights had returned, larger now, surrounding the forest. A low hum filled the air, deep enough to shake the ground. Daniel took a deep breath. Maybe it's time to stop being afraid. He touched the object. The flame flared bright white, then expanded, swallowing the room, the forest, the sky. For a moment, there was no sound, no time, only light. When Clara woke up, the sun was rising. The global blackout had ended. The signals were gone. The sky was clear. She turned on her radio. Nothing but soft static. Then, faintly, a voice came through. We are still here. We are listening. Her hands trembled. Daniel? No answer. Across the world, strange new data filled the air. Signals no one could trace. Carrying tones like music and messages no machine could decode. And high above, 5 faint lights drifted beyond the clouds, watching, waiting, whispering across the stars. He chose to remember.